Hi everyone, I'm Sophis, and once again I'm joined by Bootman, and this is sort of a part two to what we were discussing in the last time that we talked Giant Kings, because as you've seen, Giant Kings was announced to release on April 1st, so we're getting it pretty soon, and there's new info, and I think it's nice to, compare what we discussed and our own ideas and sort of see what they've shown us and even things that they haven't exactly shown us. Because, for instance, Bootman has scoured the dev stream for info.
I did my best.
Yeah. So, yeah, we've seen about as much as someone could with what they've given, and it's been a very pleasant surprise what they're doing, what they're bringing. I think the dev team has done a very solid job so far. I think that the expansions have been very good, surprisingly good. It's rare to see this kind of consistency. So yeah, let's get into it, and we're gonna discuss things we've seen and new things and all that. And yeah, let's get into the dev diary. And
Yeah, based on what we've seen so far, this could end up being one of my favorite DLCs. In terms of you gotta apply a little handicap there in that it doesn't have a new culture in it, which is something I really like, the cultural DLCs. But if you put it behind, like say Primal Fury, Ways of War, and Empire and Ashes, I'm not sure any of the other smaller DLCs are gonna beat it.
yeah, I think it's fair because I think they broke away from the usual structure, but they actually went and gave us different things because of what we didn't get. They gave us different stuff.
Wait, and if you compare this to Dragon's Dawn, which was a very comparable DLC in that it came with a Godir, this is so much more going on. Like the level of content is insane compared to something like Dragon's Dawn.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think I think they've definitely refined the way they approach content for this because they now kind of know what we like, what works, what doesn't work. They're getting a better read on us as fans and how the game kind of functions. I still think the
I think they're also just getting better too. I think in the dev stream they mentioned the artists just keep getting better and better. I think everybody's just getting better as they keep building the game.
yeah, and I'm very happy for them. I think that's a great thing. And I mean, even quality of life, all the free updates and everything, the hero rework, and now we're getting basically I wouldn't say a customization rework, but more features for customization, which I think are very nice. They're basically implementing things that were before basically mods, and now it's just vanilla, which is great. I think it's amazing when they take the community developments and they make it part of the game, because then I know that if you like mods, you basically already have it, but there's something to be said when a feature is on the game itself and then you don't need to modify it. I think
Yeah,
maybe
I
I'm
think it's the
being
right
weird
call.
about it. Maybe I'm being weird about it, but I
No, no,
think
no.
it's better.
I think that is the right. I think that is the right call. You shouldn't have to go to mods to make to. I guess well, it's just like you shouldn't need mods. Um, and if there's a good idea in a mod, yeah, incorporate it into the game itself. It's not contradictory. But I mean, to start off with the namesake, the Giant Kings themselves, we had some ideas about how they were going to work. We had some ideas about how we wanted them to work that were never going to happen. And I think that honestly, I mean, to be fair, we gave a lot of ideas, but we kind of predicted Giant Kings, I think.
Yeah, more or less. I think let me share with you because I'll put it on screen for everyone else. But I think this is the one file I didn't share with you, but it was the table from last time. And
Yes.
it's very interesting. Of course, giants, as we expected, weren't to form unit. It would be nice if they were, but that was a pipe dream, of course.
That
Uh,
was my insano pipe dream.
yeah, yeah. And they definitely have personal power. They're absolutely looking as scary as an Eldritch Sovereign or a Dragon Lord. I hope they show more of that. I mean, we've seen glimpses of it, but I'm sure it'll be on par with like a dragon. So we can have like a dragon versus giant fight.
They have given them a very specific niche where they're essentially in melee, they are more AoE than dragons. I think basically all of their attacks, it seems, do AoE. Even their range attacks all do AoE, but it's all smaller AoE than what a dragon does. So they're more focused at a range, but they're more AoE in melee compared to dragons. And I think that's a perfectly fine niche for them to be in.
Oh, absolutely. I think it makes them as powerful but different, which I think is the best situation to be in. Of course, I don't think they're natural spellcasters, although I am very curious as to which classes are available to Giant Kings. If there is some,
All of them,
oh then,
every class.
oh then, I am very curious as to how a Ranger Giant will play because, like I've mentioned to you before, Bootman, snapshot while you're hurling a boulder is a very curious notion.
There's a lot of interaction like that where I'm just wondering what exactly is going to happen with these giants interacting with things that exist. We'll get to that in a sec. The big one that I have a question about, we'll get to in a second here because I see it on the paragraph. But as far as giant classes go, I think that a giant Death Knight could surpass a dragon Death Knight in terms of the sheer aggressive carnage it could create because they have a more on-demand summon ability compared to dragons. Dragons depended on the shadow ascension to kill an enemy and animate it as a zombie. But a giant king can summon weapons as combat summons, and if that stacks with the Death Knight summon buff, then that's going to be very powerful.
Yeah, I think that would definitely make for a formidable foe. I do think dragons still would excel more at being spellblades. Maybe I think a dragon
Very
spellblade
possible.
is probably still more formidable than a giant spellblade, but I think then we're kind of splitting hairs. I think both are fairly powerful in their different ways, but I'm very, very curious as to how the Giant King will play as a combat summoner. Not only for Death Knight, but also for Ritualist. Ritualist does give some decent bonuses to summons. So
And a
yeah,
lot of this is going to depend on what their unique elemental ascensions are going to be, because they do have them. We don't really know what any of them do yet.
yeah. And just to go back a little bit to the diagram we had from last time, they are an economic powerhouse, which was surprising. I wasn't expecting them to boost, but their governor bonus is actually fairly. It's basically a light version of perfectionist artisans, which is kind of impressive, really, because
Their economic bonuses from their governor type is very strong, but don't forget about their terraforming economic bonus. That's the every city is going to get a bonus based off terrain now.
yeah, of course. But I'm saying that just baseline, not even accounting
Yes,
for the stellies. I think it's very powerful because
it is.
I mean, with the changes they've made, and I'll put that up on screen, Champion Governor is kind of crazy as far as economics go, but Giant King is no slouch either. I think it's very much going to push forward your city development, and it's going to give you a lot of materials to keep making artifacts and to keep making money. So you can probably sustain a very good army with a Giant King.
I think so. I think that the giant economic bonuses are very strong, especially their terraforming based ones. I guess one thing I'm wondering about though is basically, is there ever going to be a reason to not play giant primal? If you're just purely trying to optimize, is there a reason ever to not play a primal culture of a giant?
I mean, of course, that giants being able to terraform does solve one of Primal's biggest weaknesses. I agree with you on that because, yeah, Primal is very much limited by their trees, and some opponents or even AI, and even just the map gen can really screw you over with those trees and how they're placed. And
The
Giant kind
only
of
one that is
remedies that.
the only one that isn't screwed over by that is the Frost Mammoth, because at level 3 you can get the Marching Winter ability and just turn everything into ice anyway. But that's the only one you get
Actually,
at level
no,
3.
you're forgetting Stormcrow because
I
of
was, I was, I was I'm saying level 3 because otherwise you got to wait till level 4 to just start converting Massly from Paradise. It's still a thing you can do. It's just it takes
yeah,
longer
longer for sure.
comparatively.
But the others are a little more screwed over. Yeah.
But that doesn't apply to all of them because the one that is currently keeping me up at night is the Rock Giant.
Well, go go ahead and explain why.
The Rock Giant says, first of all, that its stelae can raise mountains. Now, that's very cool already. It's a very powerful ability. You know why it's powerful? Because mountains are hard to cross, and also mountains cannot be incorporated. And so it implies that you would basically be de-incorporating enemy territory or building vast walls around yourself. Except the rock giant also has an economic bonus for how many mountains are incorporated into your territory, which means mountains can be incorporated into your territory now.
Yeah, which is very curious. I think they're making changes to that and to lava, which before this update was like uncrossable by any means. You couldn't for any reason cross any lava territory, even if you were a flyer, even if I don't know, even if you were a fire elemental, you couldn't cross it. But the way they've written things, it is suggesting that some terrain situations will change, which is curious.
I saw at least in the underground. They seem to emphasize the underground being different from the surface, but who knows? This could extend to the surface as well. At least in the underground, lava was now like individual lava lakes that were like single, two, three tiles inside an individual region, rather than a massive region on its own.
Yeah, that's fair. And at
Which is
least
interesting.
from the trailer, you can also see a couple structures that look very. How can I put it? Basically, they're very scenic. Yes, scenic is the word, and they look fairly uncrossable. They
Well, we're gonna get to that when we get to point 3 on this list here.
the landmark regions. Yeah, yeah. So just to wrap the discussion of the previous, so I can put away this graphic. Uh, Diplomatic bonus, of course, Giant Kings aren't about diplomatic bonus, at least not focused as such. I don't think so.
They actually have a diplomatic penalty.
Yeah, so yeah, they're definitely not for diplomacy.
Dragons and giant kings have a opinion penalty of each other.
Yeah, and well, what can you expect? Is elf and dwarfs just giant sized? And army bonuses, not really, but I guess if you could argue that they do kinda, I guess it would be a yellow slash because they do have unique enchantments that they can give to items, and then you can give to your generals. But it's a very roundabout way. I wouldn't say they directly buff your army.
I think it's really interesting, the equipment stuff. It's a very cool, unique ability to give them. Because even if you look at the top end, they can make tier 5 equipment. They're gonna go all out. And yep, you have to have you have to max out that skill tree for a giant in order to unlock tier 5s.
Yeah, I mean, tier 5 is. Yeah, I think the limit is 4 currently, right?
Yes. One more infusion.
Yeah, that's going to be a whole other level. I'm guessing maybe one extra ability or extra, rather, one extra point or maybe two. Yeah, then yeah, that can be a. I mean, I don't know each infusion intimately, but I think that might unlock some synergies that you couldn't otherwise make.
I know them pretty well. The system as it is very well balanced around what you can hit at the top ends. I think this is mostly going to be a bonus. It's going to be like, oh, I get to do everything I want and also some extra damage. Like, it's going to be more like that than completely redefining your equipment package.
Yeah, that's fair. So basically, just making more use for the one infusion traits.
Yeah. I think that's probably going to be how it will end up. I could be wrong, but we'll see.
Maybe we'll find a crazy combo, or maybe you will because you're usually faster than me on this kind of stuff.
Well, it's worth mentioning here. They have split the artifact creation materials, the remnants, the fragments. They split that up into two currencies. One you need for lower level artifacts, and one you need for upper tier artifacts. So that was their answer to the fact that there was never a reason to do anything except make the strongest artifacts you could. Now there's going to be more space for you to make smaller artifacts.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and it totally ruins my strategies of playing builds that just basically clear infestations left and right, and then get all that turned into Binding Essence.
Well, actually, not, depending on how you do it, because you actually get the special upper tier fragments from disenchanting tier 3 or 4 equipment. If you have artifact hoarders, then every infestation you clear, that has a chance of having either a tier 2 or a tier 3 equipment. And they already baseline have a chance to have higher tier equipment anyway, so it might actually be even better now.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess then, yeah. I mean, it's not exactly a nerf. It's more, yeah, like you said, it's incentivizing us to not hoard the essence to just make the best and actually go ahead and try and make other stuff. I just wish that getting the really special stuff didn't take so many magic materials.
I think it's a nice reward that integrates the artifacts with the environment. I do think that requiring 3 of a magic material can be a bit much.
Yeah, it's a little tricky.
But very little is locked behind needing that many, so I think it's okay. But yeah. Do you want to do the crystal dwelling now?
Yeah, let's well, basically that's what we get as like you compared before. Before we had umbral dwellings, now we have crystal dwellings, right?
Yep,
Which I do think it's the hexagonal thing we saw in the trailer. Maybe that was the dwelling.
it is.
Yeah,
Oh no,
so
no. Sorry. That no, that's something else. That's the dungeon. I'm sure of it. The dwelling is the like spire structures with like bridges between them.
oh right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting because I can't evaluate these dwellings very much until I know more about what we're getting from them. I do know you can get things like mounts, you can pay mana to them to get benefits. I know they want you to go out and do quests and find magic. They actually compared them to the Brotherhood of Steel on the screen. Where it's like go find ancient magic versus go find ancient technology.
Yeah, that's a fair comparison.
I I don't know what to make of them yet. I don't have enough information to decide about them, but they seem to be leaning more into the geomantic side of things in that their units are going to have relevance based off what terrain they're on.
The interesting thing for me, like you said, you mentioned in passing, is mounts. Because if this is a way to get mounts, it does make things a little more interesting. Because before it was just RNG or something you had as a society trait. And then
Yep.
you can have it maybe more control on what you get. Even if it isn't like you ask exactly for the mount you want. Maybe it is. We don't know, do we?
It's so the mount we know for sure is you get a crystal horse. That is one thing we know for sure.
Yeah, so maybe, just maybe, this could give access to other mounts. So we'll see. But
Yeah.
if it does, very nice. So we can basically, if you have a very specific kind of hero in mind or ruler, you can maybe get it through this.
Interesting. They mention it here, even though I didn't see it necessarily yet from the dwelling, but I saw it in another part of the live stream. The colossal primordial beasts. Now, I don't know what they're going to be doing with the colossal primordial beast. I don't know if every single animal is going to get a primordial colossal variant. That'd be pretty sweet. I'd be interested in that.
Yeah.
Especially if they took up the same slot. Like say every animal could be a primordial beast, but the odds of a tier 5 being just any primordial beast is set. It's not like we're going to get flooded with animals. It'll be its own package. If it was like that, I'd be very interested. But the thing about it that blew my mind, and I wonder how many people like saw it. I told you the second I noticed it.
Yeah, the fact that it isn't a mythic unit, it's a soldier
No.
unit.
Well, yeah, it's a shock.
Yeah, it's at least the one we've seen, the primordial bloodback.
Yep, that was a shock unit, a tier 5. So that means that's the first tier 5 in the game, as far as I know, that you can apply like just any enchantment to that applies to normal melee unit. You could, I think, Keeper's Mark applies to shock units, so you could give it steadfast. Like that sounds horrific. I want nothing to do with that. That sounds like a nightmare.
I mean, if this does open up that venue, it will make them very unique and valuable units. Even if you can't normally acquire them, even if it's something, that just is there to be an enemy, we do have that strategy of polymorphing something, then final judgmenting it and having it in your army. So even if you technically can't get it, you can kind of get it and make a build around that. So that's pretty spicy, even if we don't straight up get it.
Yeah, there will be ways of acquiring them. And honestly, here's the thing. I've gone through a lot of effort to recruit Lost Wizards into my armies before, and it's been very fun, and they're kind of cool. I don't know how worth it is to make your whole build based around getting the Lost Wizards. However, basing your whole build around getting Colossal Primordial Beasts, that might actually be worth the effort. I don't think I can stress enough how huge having a tier 5 shock unit is. Like just for context, I think it's they're strict metrics that they use to determine what units are at each level. And if you look at the way rank ups work, it's like every 2 levels is treated as if they are a tier higher. So if you have a tier 1 unit and then they level up twice, that in theory makes them the equivalent of an unleveled tier 2. That is the general design philosophy. So far, one of the balancing mechanisms behind tier 5s being tier 5s is that they couldn't receive enchantments. And not only are they receiving enchantments, they're animals too, which means there are unique enchantments in the game that apply to animals. Like you could get, in theory, there's the figure one that makes all your beasts bigger and stronger. That could work on this, as far as we know.
Yeah. You're not only thinking of Primal Goddess, which I mean, is it Primal Goddess? It's the one of the tier 5s.
Nature god.
Yeah,
Tome of the Goddess of
Goddess.
Nature.
Yeah, that one. And you're also thinking of one of the nature tier 3s, I think.
Yeah, bigger. Empowered Beast. 20%, 20% extra damage and 10 extra health. And then Tome of the Goddess of Nature, that has Master Rejuvenate, which heals or resurrects all your animals and plant units, and Force of Nature, which is an enchantment that applies to all your animals, giving them critical hit and 4 of light damage. And that's not counting all the ones that are like unique things that normally you can't apply to specific, like a tier 5 mythic animal. So, for instance, if I'm trying to think like just crazy enchantments off the top of my head, but one would be Astral Mirror, reflect 50% of physical damage sustained back onto the attacker, like on a tier 5.
Yeah, That would be very scary to go up against, even if it's just one in your army. Even if you can only score one, that's going to be a center unit and it's going to just wreak havoc for you.
That very much gets to the point of what are you realistically doing in the situation? You know, like one of those
Yeah,
memes.
yeah. What are you going to do? You can do anything. You don't have a response to me, basically. Yeah, you're screwed.
Yeah, you don't have the cards.
Yeah. So yeah, landmark regions. I think this is what we were talking about before of the impassable looking terrain, like in the trailer, right? Where
I'm curious about it. Yeah.
yeah, I'm curious as to how this is different from a wonder, so to speak. It sounds very close to wonder.
If I was to speculate, I would say that a landmark region probably is more walkable than it seems. That'd be my guess immediately. Is that even though some of them look crazy and impassable, largely they will be walkable. Now, what throws me off about this is it says new massive regions. Now, in the trailer, it didn't look like the regions were that much bigger than a regular region. Um, are we realistically seeing regions that are going to be bigger than normal regions that have maybe some sort of special annexation requirement? And I mean, how does that affect your map distribution? So, for instance, I play a lot with Hermit Kingdom. I love Hermit Kingdom. It's one of the, if you're willing to be evil, that is bar none like the best society trait. I love it. Um, However, it's harmed when people are able to make contact with your empire and like touch your borders. If we're having a lot of these new huge regions, that's going to make it harder to protect my borders. And the reverse is true if you're doing something like Thrones. Was it in Throne Kingdom? I forget what the exactly. It's an order side trait gives your
Yeah,
Throne
I
City
know
plus 20
exactly the
gold.
one. Basically, the Throne City boosts its own income and boosts adjacent regions,
Yeah,
adjacent
honestly,
cities.
that is the most boring thing anybody could ever care about when we're talking about all this crazy stuff. It's gonna be like waterfalls, ancient dragons, underground monuments. And it's like, how will this affect my geography and my like
Yeah,
my borders?
yeah,
Um, but to be fair, there's not much we can talk about. We don't know what level of benefits we're going to see. We don't know if there's going to be some sort of like special requirement. You know, we there just is. It's not clear yet.
yeah. The curious thing is, if this is different from Wonders, do we have to fight to get it, or do we just get it? So it's like, how can we put this? So it's like first come, first serve, and it's a really amazing thing that you would wage war over, but you have no requirement, you know? But this would make any city a very important city because it has this in its borders.
I think that is likely. I wonder. So here's the thing. I'm gonna blindly speculate based off of literally nothing. What if the way you incorporate landmark regions is based off of having enough adjacent regions? So if you have, say, 2 or 3 regions that you've annexed adjacent to the landmark region, then you can annex the landmark region.
That's possible. I mean, it sounds a little more complex than usual city annexations, so I think it's less likely, but could see it as a possibility. So, like when you click on the region, it has like some indicator that shows, oh, you need X more regions adjacent to this so you can annex this. So yeah, it could go that way. I just think it's a little more complex than what we usually get, where it's either you instantly can include it, or it's too far for you, or you have to fight to get it.
Personal. So there's another option, I guess. I don't think it's going to be this because they would have mentioned it if it would. But do you remember in Planetfall where there were like locations you would go to and your heroes would like do a quest there?
Yeah, I recall that. Basically, you had your hero doing nothing for a long while.
Yeah, that was not a fun mechanic, and they didn't mention it here, so I don't think we're going to get it. But that's another possibility.
Yeah, I think they would scrap that because that in Planetfall really destroyed the momentum of some of your armies. Basically, oh, you lose this army for a while, and sure, you could detach the army and have it move without the ruler, but then you have your leader exposed, and sometimes it's a battle. So it was very awkward, I think, as a mechanic. I don't think they'll bring it as such unless they have a great idea of how to implement it.
Okay, but one more wild speculation. Okay, I got one more
Okay.
wild mixed fix. Okay, once again, literally nothing to back this up. What if the regions you control when you have an army on it is like an active occupation, and if your army gets driven out by somebody else, that person now gains control of that territory. So it could be like this permanent, like almost like a Cold War border skirmish thing between you and somebody else's city.
Right. So King of the Hill, basically.
Yes.
Yeah, I could see that. Nothing in this text indicates that, but it could be, and it would be an interesting surprise. And look, my first thought, if this instantly is a region where you can have that kind of thing happen, and it's kind of a free for all I'm thinking is sanctioned murder. Because even if you're not at war, you can go ahead and screw up someone else's army. So you would want them to show up here just so you can screw with them. But
I think that'd be very fun. I don't think we're getting that.
yeah, definitely not. Someone like me would take full advantage of the diplomatic shenanigans that would happen if that was the
I
case.
mean, that's why I think it would be fun, though. It could be like a mini version of the seals.
Yeah, yeah, I understand. So basically, the Seals victory, but in a sort of free for all form, that would be very interesting. And I think even the AI could be very scummy about it. But but like, it would get you once, you would get pissed off, and from that point onward, you would be very smart about it.
Yeah.
And the next point is why reading comprehension is important. Shop structures and this whole thing talking about how merchants are going to sell you mounts and all that. See, we were speculating on the crystal dwelling having that, but this here is talking about that. So we just might get it through the shop structures.
Oh, I know for a fact the crystal dwelling has a crystal horse mount. I just know that part for a fact.
Right. But I mean, I think this is more likely to be where we'll find the other mounts. So
Yes, I
my
agree.
bad on this end. And this kind of, I know it's very little to go on, but this kind of reminds me of Goblin Traders in Warcraft 3, where they were basically this neutral kind of structure where you could go and buy stuff. And
Yeah.
yeah, and the fact you can attack them is a little silly, but I hope the battle is difficult, just so you can get to screw you if you try to be kind of a bandit king too much.
I can't say that I've ever found a game where attacking a shop um it felt like a good mechanic. Because what you get is something like, say, Baldur's Gate, where you attack the shop, and instead of getting access to everything that the person you killed has, there's like two random items that drop,
Yeah,
or something like that.
well, I mean, still, I think this in this case, it might just be more of a role playing option. Because if you're playing an evil empire or, like I said, a bandit king, I think it falls in line. So maybe your big burly Viking berserkers that are like all about undead and all that probably aren't feeling like shopping. They
That's
just
fair.
might raid. So yeah,
What do, what does skills mean though?
yeah. This
We're gonna
is
buy.
also mentioned on here exclusive skills. What
Yeah.
what that reminds me is I'm not sure if you had it happen because it happened rarely for me. It happened, I think, maybe twice, where you get a quest line that you finish with a specific hero or your ruler, and you simply get a skill. and it's just like separate on the tree. So much so that
Yes.
the tree kind of expands. So maybe this is what they're talking about, that we may be able to have that more consistently through the shops. So we could do a kind of crazy mix and match of maybe, just maybe, I don't know. Now, this is my time to wildly speculate. Maybe your Death Knight can get snapshots or some other
Yep.
thing, and yeah, if this is a way to bring an otherwise obscure kind of reward more into the fray and become more of an interesting, non-randomly generated kind of thing, I think it's good because leaving it to RNG, I think, can, depending on what it is, can kind of leave you crawling up the walls, especially in a strategic game where you prefer things to be in a way that you can plan for them. Even if, sometimes favorable and unfavorable things happen, I think it's nice to give you a degree of control of, okay, maybe I can't guarantee that the shopkeeper will have the skill I want, but if I go there, I'll still get something, you know?
The one that will traumatize me forever is there's a spell you can get for exploring the Umbral Abyss. I don't know if you can get it any other way. You might be able to, but either way, it's rare. It's not skill to spell, I guess. And you cast on your army, and when you do, a random unit in that army instantly evolves. Now, here's the thing. I'm playing Tome of Dragons so rarely that what are the odds that I'm going to be playing a Tome of Dragons build at the same time as I'm also playing an Umbral Abyss game where I happen to be the person to get that ability?
Yeah, that's a very extremely niche. That's pretty crazy, you know? But yeah, I think this is good. I'm loving, like I said, this is what we're getting instead of what we usually get. And I'm really liking it because last time it was the hero rework, and now we get this. It shows that they're looking at old stuff and they're thinking about renovating it, making it more interesting, making it more engaging, making it more dynamic. So I'm very happy about it.
I think it's interesting to compare this one to Dragon's Dawn because compared to it, we're losing out on lizard people. That's about it that we're missing out on compared to Dragon Dawn. But in return, we're getting so much more. We're getting the shopkeepers, we're getting the dwellings, we're getting the landmark regions, we're getting what was it? New realm traits, more ancient wonders, tons of stuff. That's not counting the free updates.
Yeah, uh, it's it's a lot. It's a very hefty update, uh, and I'm really happy for it. I mean, we were worried that there would be a long wait between the DLCs. But honestly, I would say this was worth the wait because this is a very beefy, very solid update.
I was expecting to wait another 3 months to get this DLC because it said quarter 2. I wasn't expecting literally day one of quarter 2 was going to come out.
Yeah, that's actually fair because a lot of companies go ahead and, oh, quarter 2, and that's a polite way of saying it, the 31st of June.
Yeah.
So yeah, back to the post, and yeah, 2 new tomes, and I know Bootman is way more excited about this than I am, and I'm sure he's a little sour that it's not 4 tomes.
Yeah, I mean, 2 tomes is the most I could expect from anything that's not a major DLC. Currently, my nightmare is that Archon Prophecy won't have 4 tomes in it. If I need it, I need it to have 4 tomes. Okay, um, but and it might have 2 or 3. We'll see what happens. But basically, the 2 tomes are both interesting, and they fill weirdly specific niches in ways that I think are complicated. So, Dungeon Depths is very firmly, very, very firmly the underground tome. Okay. And I'm curious what shape that will take. As it stands, it looks like there's almost no reason not to take it if you are going to be an underground empire. However, there's other considerations to have. For instance, the enchantment that it gives all of your units cave walk. And what that means is that's one thing that having cave adaptation gives you in your race. So it means that even a surface based empire could get a lot of benefit from this. Like, say you're building most on the surface and you just barely build underground enough to get the special province improvements. And then, other than that, you're just sending your forces down into the depths. Or
Yeah,
even, let's let's say you've got a bunch of farms from other tomes or your feudal or something like that, then you don't need the farm building, the ability to build farms underground. You could play an underground empire without taking the subterranean start using this tome. It's very interesting in that way.
yeah, I think that's perfectly fair. I mean, it's definitely good to add something that incentivizes you to at least dig a little below your empire, like you said, because I had that situation happen, and very rarely do I take the option versus holding more borders in the surface. So having more reason to go down there than because the point is adjacency matters. And I'm very particular about building and expanding my cities to ensure maximum adjacency bonuses. So for a hybrid city to go down, you would just get the same you get on the surface, but underground. So there was no incentive. So this tome giving you an option to uniquely exploit that, I think is very neat.
I 100% agree. Yeah, it's a interesting tome. We don't know the level to which it goes. And here's the thing, this is where we get into the number one thing hold me up on being able to like really theorize about how this will go. As it stands now, terraforming is kind of a crap shot. Okay. So, for instance, especially with automatic terraforming things. So, say that you're doing, and I don't know if this is still current, but at some point, Umbral expansion seems to have been stopped by Marching Winter. Like, if it turns a thing into ice, it can't be ice and also Umbral. Which, maybe that's fine. Maybe that's just something that is not compatible. Well, what if you had Sylvan Wolf as your primal culture, and you've got the Bloom of Paradise from or whatever it's called, where it expands grassland territories. In theory, it should expand grasslands and forests all throughout your domain, but I can't guarantee you that will happen because of the way the replacement effects work. It's so we get to this point where we're going to have this thing called dungeons where it converts underground territory into dungeon territory. Is that going to get rid of my mushroom forests? Is there any point in playing, say, primal spider and also a dungeon build, or is that going to be completely pointless? What if I want to play corruption and dungeons, have like an evil dungeon where my umbralness is corrupting the dungeon? Is that a thing we're going to account for? um Up to this point, I would say no, but some things they've said seem to imply that they're accounting more for that sort of thing. And so I'm interested to see what they're going to do. What's
Yeah,
your take on it?
I mean, I'm definitely curious because, like you said, this does basically taking back to what I said that they're looking at old stuff and revisiting it. It's very much possible that with the changes to lava lakes and mountains, that they are giving a very broad pass at the system of how land and land interactions work. It's very possible that, for instance, the Druidic terraformers now interacts in a way that's, I mean, mechanically. I mean, the rules as written is probably the same, but I mean, systems wise, they probably took a pass at it and are more or less reformulating how those things interact. Because we did reach a point in the game where there are so many of these systems and new things that you kind of have to make sure everything works and doesn't feel like all these weird layers that don't really interact with one another. So I do think ideally, yes, I think you should be able to play Primal Spider and have a dungeon, and then you can have this weird underground dungeon kind of thing, or you're playing Umbral and you have this evil dungeon. I mean, it's what should happen, and given the track record of the devs, it's probable it will happen because when they go into something and they make a new feature that's based on it, they usually revisit the system along with it. So I have faith. I know I have no basis or data to base this on, but I do think they will revisit and touch it up. It would be silly to introduce this whole new thing and have it awkwardly interact with what's already there. Because I think that takes the player out of the experience and devalues the new thing they're bringing. So it's basically they should and they have to. And I have faith that they will, because otherwise, it would be very janky because tomes are supposed to bring a lot more variety to the game, not force you into a niche that you can't even play much with. So it, as a minimum, it should have fun interactions with older stuff.
I agree. Yeah, no, that's totally fair. I think that aside from that, which is just the special province improvement, really, that's the only thing we've really talked about. Well, say that is weird. That's the non-researchable special province improvement. This tome has 3 special province improvements unlocked inside of it, which is unheard of. There's not a single tome currently that gives a researchable special province improvement. This tome gives 3 of them, which is going to redefine a lot of builds. Like anything that involves great builders, that's going to be insane. This might end up being, if done correctly, I don't know the details yet because we don't know the details of what all these do. This could be one of the greatest economic tomes released so far. And even if it isn't quite that level, the other advantages you get are pretty insane. Raiders of the Deep gives you defense bonuses underground and offense bonuses on the surface, plus 10% damage on the surface. That's significant. And the Clay Forge gives you access to three different tier 3 recruitable soldiers. So this is something that you can basically build your entire army and your entire military around, all in a single tier 2 tome.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's very front loaded and it is a very exotic tome compared to its brethren. So I'm very happy that it's such an early entry kind of tome. I am curious if it is overtuned, though. So, I'm worried that this might be as key for economic builds as Glades is for a polearm build.
Completely fair. That's a fair concern. It's really going to depend on the exact nature of these special province improvements. We only saw one, which is the Clay Forge, and it seems really good. It gives +5 production and +5 draft per adjacent dungeon province.
Yeah.
Like that's really strong.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
I guess it depends on how much they've changed the underground, because they say they're making the underground easier for you to build cities in now. Like expand. If you can even get that to have 4 or 5 adjacent provinces, that's already paying for itself in a ridiculous way. And if you have like say 6 or 7 adjacent provinces, which does happen, that's incredible.
of course. And yeah, I'm curious to see how the underground will work because uh, it definitely is going to change. If nothing else, for like I've mentioned like 3 times now, the lava lakes and the changes they're
Yes.
making. So they seem to be really focused on changing how we interact with terrain. So I'm curious as to underground if that means more digging around or more like less digging around and more definite borders but less weird full spaces of nothing because of a lava lake or body or something. I'm curious as to how this rework will look, but I'm happy because I think the underground. I wouldn't say it's. I mean, it's fine. In insofar as I could go the whole dev cycle of Age of Wonders 4, never specifically complaining about it. But if someone brought it to my attention, I would say, yeah, it could use some improvement, and I'm hoping this is the improvement.
I'll go a bit spicier and say that I would explicitly complain about it. Specifically because I've had far too many games where I get pigeonholed into a corner whenever I play Underground.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I was playing a game a few months back where there was an underground ruler. And just because of how the NPC stuff worked out, that person was stuck throughout the entire game with one city because they just couldn't escape and build more cities.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it's a very real possibility. I've had a couple games where I was definitely screwed by, for instance, a major city on top of the one exit I had. So there was no way I could exit without penalties. But I solved it, the kind of Roman way. So you can get around it, even though it's a more limited amount of choices you have. So yeah, uh, I think that's Dungeon Depths covered well. One, I think you are excited, but I think I'm the one most excited for is Geomancy, because we're finally getting some love for Materium. The most undervalued, less tomes, least attention given affinity, of course. No, but seriously, I think this finally adds some value to Tome of the Creator, which it wasn't that it was bad, but it was very niche. I mean, I think all the other tier 5 tomes interact more with the tomes before them in some way. I think Tome of Geomancy had, Tome of the Creator had less things going for it that aligned compared to other tier 5 brethren, because even Goddess of Nature, which it is niche, it is absolutely niche, but nature has so much animal stuff that even if it is a niche, it is a well-served niche. You didn't have that for elementals, and now you have it with Geomancy.
The big thing that keeps Goddess of Nature in play is Tome of Paradise, turning all of your units into plants. If that didn't exist, I don't know how viable Goddess of Nature would be.
You're forgetting that dragons are also served by Goddess of Nature. At
They
least
are,
with
but
some things, not everything.
yeah. I'm just saying. I think that's I think that's the primary use I get out of Goddess of Nature is all my units being plants and then resurrecting them or buffing them all.
Yeah, that's fair.
Creator for me, my experience of Tome of the Creator is it has several best in class abilities. It has the best combat summon in the game. It has arguably the best AoE tactical spell in the entire game. It has arguably the best siege project in the game. I think maybe even beyond arguably that it is an insanely good siege project for something that you can research. And it has the best enchantment in the game if we're talking specifically about elementals.
Yeah.
However, you only ever really need like maybe two of those things at most. I don't know how many builds I go into Tome of the Creator and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to use all this stuff. It's going to be great. But maybe that's how we're supposed to be playing. But yeah, it's the tome is the tome does not provide as many wide sweeping benefits compared to other tomes, is what I would qualify this as. A siege project is a siege project. A tactical summon is a tactical summon. A combat spell is a combat spell. None of that stuff really permanently alters how you're playing, like a lot of the other tier 5 tomes will do.
That's fair. That's
Um,
fair.
and it doesn't have a resurrection spell either, which is I think pretty critical for a tier 5 tome. But
Now it
it
does.
does. Well, yeah, sort of. It has the essentially. The enchantment it has, which is always very good, the Undying enchantment for elementals. Now, if you take Geomancy at tier 3, all of your units are elementals, and so all of your racial units will have Undying. That is insane.
Yeah, take that, undead people.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this is a great tome. I'm very excited for it because I think this will bring it equalizes, for instance, a lot of the accessibility of some elementals. Because before it, for instance, water elemental was a little harder to get. I think mostly from random events. At least maybe I'm misremembering, but I don't think any tome really gives you water.
No, not a single tome gives you water
Yeah,
elementals.
yeah. See, I was right on that. So, yeah, finally you have access to water, and you can get wind elementals, fire elementals. So you don't have to make this crazy grab like every elemental tome in existence to have access to every elemental. So you can kind of focus on, okay, maybe I'll have more this kind of elemental, but I like having access to all of them. So this is a very nice tome for that. I think it unifies a lot of things that I feel were a little more scattered. This kind of becomes this crossing of all kind of things that I mean, different strategies, different possibilities. And I think for primals, this is a very thematic tome, especially with giant kings and elementals and primal. I think it makes for a very flavorful kind of civilization.
Yeah, it's a nice tome where it has very concrete mechanical benefits and also very strong wins, just objectively in terms of power. I think that if you don't, seriously, if you're not playing a summoning build and you're not going into Tome of Creator, if you're not doing one of those two things, I'm not sure this build is much for you. But aside from that, I think that
It kind of does because it's a very niche example, but Resonant Blades, of course, it's not a ranged enchantment, but if you put that on your infantry alongside afflictors, you can have your infantry give different kinds of elemental damage, and it's a much easier thing than having to fish across several tomes to have access to different elemental damages so you can trigger different afflictions. But again, it's a niche case. Of course, I agree with you that I think it's a very specific kind of tome, but I think there are fringe applications for sure.
I think that's completely fair.
So yeah, I think we covered the two new tomes. I think here on this and so much more. One thing we should point out is you did see on the dev stream that they're increasing, right? The amount of slots for customization on realms, right?
Correct.
So yeah, this is one of the nicer things because now you can make even crazier realms, I guess. Sometimes I did feel a little bit limited with the slots I was given. I'm sure other people had everything they wanted, but it's nice that you can keep making more stuff and having more randomization. Uh, yeah. Which point do you think we should tackle next? I think customization. Do you want to go into that maybe, or do you want to
Yeah,
go
well,
into the
it's your show, man. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's talk customization. I think it's a quick subject, and then we can go into the other spicy kind of thing we haven't gone over yet. That's the feudal culture rework. So
Sounds good to me.
yeah, yeah, customization. I really like what they've done. Giants are looking pretty nice, but I think the nice thing that came with them wasn't exactly for the giants. The forms, which were mod things. Again, like we mentioned it in passing earlier. Basically, they're implementing two mods that are available right now if you try it. One try it, but you get more armor colors, and you do get the ability to kind of play around with your form units having the shape of a different form unit. So you can have a buff elf or a skinny gnome-sized orc and all that.
Yeah. Um, it's a good choice. I'm looking forward to. I have a few ideas already. I want to make I mean, not just for the meme value. I want to make very large dwarves. I think I can make them look like mini giants. I think that'll be fun.
Yeah, or even just make them kind of look like Vikings, because I think the dwarves have better beard selections than the humans do. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think you were talking about kobolds.
Oh yeah. I've mentioned with Bootman in private. The lizard form in gnome size makes very lovely kobolds. So you can finally have a dragon ruler with kobold as their retinue. I think it's very flavorful, very classic. You can have a uh, very by the book dragon this way. It's very neat. Uh, I tried with the mod. I'm not saying that it's janky per se, but it's just a slider, and sometimes it doesn't really make it clear which form you're borrowing for your unit, and it's a little more difficult to customize versus what they're giving us. This is part of. I'm not saying that the modder did a bad job, by no means. I'm sure that they did the best, because I don't know. I don't know a thing about modding. I don't know how complicated it was to make that mod, or uh, how it was. But the nice thing about the official implementation is, because it's official, they have a bigger team and they are sort of forced to make it more accessible. And the way they've made it, I think, is very nice, very a very neat way that gives you instant feedback on the general silhouette your unit's going to have, and it's very good. And I don't have much to say on the matter of armor colors. It's just need to have more options. I think it would be even nicer if we also had extended faction colors.
Yeah, I think that based off what we saw, we're getting probably about double the existing faction colors. For no faction color, metal colors. We're getting about double the existing metal colors, which I think is very cool. And I'm curious if, like you said, that'll extend to faction colors as well. Um, yeah, I think that there's going to be a lot of options here, and I'm very much looking forward to it. How do you feel about the Giant King customization themselves, though? Like the customizations for the Giant Kings?
Well, I think I feel there's more variety to it than there is with Eldritch Sovereigns, which I appreciate. I'm kind of sad that Eldritch Sovereigns, out of every other customizable ruler, at least looks wise, they feel very restricted in how they can look. Even color wise, you have a very narrow selection of colors for your Eldritch ruler, and you can see it's not the case at all with the Giant Kings. They're probably as customizable as dragons, if not more. I think they had a very varied idea of what a giant should look like, and the fact that they have these kind of four big subdivisions of how giants are: fire giant, frost giants, and all that. I think it pushed them to consider each of those and try to represent those in some way. So I'm very happy with the variety that we're getting. And yeah, I'm very happy. I think they did better visually than they did with Eldritch Sovereigns. As you can see, flashing right here on the screen, I mean, you're seeing what I'm saying, where you can pretty much tweak with them, maybe to the same extent you can a Wizard King or even a Champion. Although champions, of
Yeah,
course, are more flexible.
just the pure. I mean, they're getting a lot of armor variety. They're getting a lot of head. The head variety is insane. I do wish they had distinguished between the head and the helmet, because as it stands, the head and the helmet are the same thing for the giants.
Yeah,
Um, which is a little bit sad and does hamper the customization options. But I think I mentioned to you the one thing that I would really like, and I don't think we're gonna get it. I don't think we're ever gonna get it, and it's very sad. But I would love it if the Giants got outfits that at the very least evoked cultures. So you could have like an industrious armor for a giant, an industrious helmet for a giant, and same thing for dark and stuff like that. I think that'd be really fun.
Yeah, that would be very neat. I think I understand it would be very costly because what are we up to? What, 8 cultures now? 9? Uh,
Yep.
yeah, I understand that means 9 different outfits if you wanted to represent each one, and possibly 18 if the female skeleton and the male skeleton are, I mean, they don't look that different, but there's some work to be had, I'm sure, because they clearly don't operate off of the same rigging as the regular units. Otherwise, you could just tack on, champion stuff. But
Yeah, they do not work on the same rigging.
so yeah, I understand that this would be a costly endeavor, but it would be neat if there was at least one for each culture to kind of bind the giants and the culture they're leading. Yeah, I am 100% agree with you. Although I think we can get close-ish maybe with some options. I think some cultures it will be a little easier to represent than others, but for the most part, I think you can kinda get it with what we have.
I think we're gonna be just fine. I think that we're gonna be able to make, several distinct giants. Like for instance, you said for Eldritch Sovereigns, I've made 4 Eldritch Sovereigns, and then there's like 2 or 3 baseline in the game. I feel like I've really stretched the capacity of the system to make interesting Eldritch Sovereigns.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
don't know. I don't know how many more distinct Eldritch Sovereigns I could make.
And you're in luck because personally for me there's like literally one combo that I like. So yeah,
That's fair.
it's very complicated. I but maybe it's not for us, maybe some people really like all the Eldritch Sovereign options and they think they are distinct enough. So maybe it's a matter of taste. We are talking after all about vanity and fashion here.
I mean, so here's the final note I would end on for Eldritch Sovereign customization. I would say that in general, Eldritch Sovereign head and bodies and shoulders and whatnot do not line up together in a lot of different exciting ways, typically. Not compared to other factions. It feels very much like each head goes to each body in a lot of ways.
Right, right. I understand what you mean. They have sets, and you can kind of kit bash the sets, but they don't look as good as kit bashing the other stuff.
And once again, this is just speaking broadly. There
Yeah,
are cool combinations, but yeah.
yeah. But yeah, I think this about covers talking about customization and what we've seen. Yeah, this I probably already had on screen as a pop up. The differences of each giant, the particular bonuses each of them give, which is interesting. It's more variety than I think Dragon gets with the affinities. It definitely gives you reasons to try different giants innately because of just how different they are. They're kind of like subcultures of their own.
Yeah, it's they're very terraforming dependent.
Yeah.
I'm curious
L-
how that's gonna go. I,
I mean, look at this, man. Eldritch Sovereigns could never. Yeah, this is really good.
yeah, the variety on them is very impressive.
I'm
I'm very interested to see how they go when I get in there.
I'm super excited to make mine. So
I've
yeah,
got I've got 4 or 5 different plans for Giant Kings already, so I need to.
I have
They
some
better have some good
ideas,
variety.
and I mean we are going to discuss a few of those build ideas a little closer to the end.
Yep,
So yeah, hero skills. I think we don't have much to go on to really talk about.
we know a good
Uh,
amount. The left side is stuff related to artifact creation, so it's special It's special runes, it's getting more artifact fragments, and unlocking tier 5 artifacts. The one in the middle is summoning spectral weapons. So those are the combat summons, which could be. I mean, my experience with combat summons has been that combat summons are the best way to steamroll the early game. So maybe the Giants will be even more of an early game powerhouse than we first thought if you just jump straight into that. It really depends on the actual functionality of
Yeah,
the
the
combat summons.
performance.
Actually, that could affect a few of my builds. That'd be interesting. And then the last one is their elemental specific long range attack.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But yeah, I mean, not as much to go in depth with, but yeah,
No,
basically what we have. And yeah, I think we talked enough about the adjustments to the item forge. So basically, new tier gives you a little more to work with, and the distinction between certain tiers, basically.
Yep.
So you are more incentivized to mix and match earlier on than just try and make the best artifact out of the gate. And
real quick, just one thing I do want to mention about that
yeah,
is the part of the level up tree for giants, the first one I believe,
right.
gives you more resonance, more remnants, more artifact creation points when you disenchant an artifact. So my curiosity is mathematically, will it be better to take reclaimers or artifact hoarders with giants? Because if the boost to your fragments is enough, it could be more worth it to go artifact hoarders, get extra artifacts, and disenchant them.
Why not both?
Because giants start with item forge, so reclaimers is slightly less optimized for them.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. But yeah, I mean, you still could, but I understand
Yes.
there's overlap. So yeah, animated weapons, very neat looking, very exciting. You know, we'll see what happens. I really like the runic stuff they've got going on, especially the more frosty one reminds me a little bit Death Knight stuff, but that's the Warcraft fan in me. I think Earth and I think this Stormlight are.
I don't know.
I think they look a little too similar. I think maybe a tinge more yellow, golden yellow, could have.
If I was to guess, the top left is probably Earth. The one below that is probably Storm. And the one to the right is probably Ice. That'd be my guess.
Personally, I'm hardcore to think this is ice, but yeah, maybe this is storm. I don't know.
I
Yeah,
can't say for sure.
but I would definitely want more gold in this because the top left and the bottom right, I feel are very similar. But that's just, aesthetics, and maybe it looks better on the battlefield because this is just like the general screen thing. So yeah.
Yeah, we'll see.
So yeah, this is the ranged attack and how it's different for each giant. Their signature skills. Do you want to talk about that, or should I just?
We know so little about these; it's insane. I don't know what to make of these at all.
Yeah, fair enough. So
Very fast movement on a giant is very funny to me.
and
That's what I'll say.
and very scary. If you see something that size moving that fast, you run. But
Yeah.
apparently not as much as it.
It looks like the way actually, Troll, there is something to talk
Yeah.
about. I just realized every single one of those is a unique icon.
Oh yeah, it's like Eldritch Sovereign. It's not like
Yeah.
Dragon.
That's interesting. Maybe in practice they'll be very similar to the normal hero skills. In fact, I expect they will be, but that does imply a greater degree of difference than maybe we were expecting initially.
Yeah, probably. I guess they did it with Eldritch Sovereign, and they felt like they should keep the same level of specificity, basically. So basically,
Yeah.
dragons were kind of shafted by being the earlier ones, maybe. Although I do
I think
think,
that's fair. They've
although
done a good job updating
yeah,
them.
I think they did, and I really love that Primal Dragon is an option that was the old nature dragon where you had regeneration, and it was an amazing option, and now it's kind of a general thing any dragon can grab at the cost of losing a major aspect. Because
Yep.
Primal Dragon is such a great one. I'm glad they took it out, but they had the sense to bring it back in a different way that's still very much beneficial and as powerful as it was.
Yep. Completely
So
agree.
so yeah. Yeah, like I mean, this goes over a little bit in more detail than the Steam Diary went. Yeah, like you were saying, this is unique, more unique stuff than what a dragon would get. So definitely each level does get more attention and all that.
That last paragraph is interesting. I'm not sure what it actually means, though.
Yeah, that's. I guess the thing is, hmm, that's a very good question. Next question. I guess we'll wait and see. Yeah, and well, this closes it up for them, but we have more to talk about. I'm not sure if they made a separate diary on it, but or maybe they're still to publish it. But Feudal is getting a rework, everyone, and it's a very nice rework, very interesting kind of rework. I'm gonna put it up on screen with what we have so far. So this is pretty much the rework. We're getting two subcultures and not three, or like Mystic Gods or you know others have. But I think those two are fairly interesting ways to tackle feudal now: monarchy and aristocracy. I'm showing on screen. I think you should have the same as me, boot.
Yep.
Where yeah, so basically, monarchy is we lost evolution that peasants had, and it became a bigger thing for monarchy. And now you have this ability to promote uh, certain units, and you have this whole for the monarch kind of thing that focuses more on you having your ruler as the center of your civilization. And then you have aristocracy, which is perfect for a cult of personality playthrough. And it feels a little bit Game of Thrones, maybe.
I think it's all very excellent design. My one quibble would be I wish they had kept the old feudal culture as a subculture.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, they definitely did that with Mystic, and yeah, which one was it? It's Potential, or
Their one is it's not potential. It's
no?
not potential.
It's
It's not summoning. It's attunement. I think is what it's
yeah,
called.
Toon. Yeah, Toon. Yeah, maybe they should have kept it because I know a few builds of yours are screwed because peasants no longer have evolve, and it was a nice synergy that it had with dragons in that.
And they also got rid of the adjacency bonuses that fuel units got.
Oh yeah, that as well. Uh, it's. I mean, I'm not very disappointed. I'm happy, especially because, and I'll discuss that when we talk builds a little further. But it enhanced one of the builds that I've already made and put up for everyone. That kind of became more thanks to this update. So I'm happy that Feudal is getting this touch up. I'm hoping other older cultures get this touch up. Of course, I 100% agree with you. They should have kept the old option just in case. It's neat. I'm not sure how much it would have complicated things, but could have been nice. In
I am also happy with the update, even though it killed all three of my feudal builds.
yeah, it's different ways to engage with this culture, which is neat. And the aristocracy also feels, since we're calling back Planetfall, it also reminds me of how the last DLC worked. I forget the name of it. it was, I don't remember, but the paladin culture, basically space
Oh yeah, they were
paladins.
cool.
Yeah, aristocracy feels a lot like it, where each house now, each city is a house, and it feels very important, and they're trying to give all this certain vibes. I would be very happy, although I doubt you could have that level, but it would be neat if it randomly generated a slight alteration of the heraldry for
It
each
does.
city. Oh, it does? Oh, that's very
Yep.
neat. Oh, then
It-
I'm very happy. See, this is why I have faith in those devs, folks, because I didn't even know about that. I just imagined it. I thought it was a pipe dream, and they went and did it. So I'm very happy with that.
yep, you can customize the house name, the emblem, everything.
Yeah, I mean, that's perfect. That's perfect. I think this will be very fun, very flavorful, and definitely again cult of personality. So you can have a you can basically play a whole culture as one single faction, which is very interesting. You could basically do a Warhammer thing with the elector counts, and you can even make a vassal build. I wonder if the vassals keep all the customization you make. That would be very neat for a vassal build.
The vassals they're not a part of the feudal culture until you adopt them, and then when you incorporate them, then they become their own house within your culture.
No, no, no. I mean, you found a city of your culture and you release it as a vassal. Does it
Yeah, that'd be
keep?
interesting.
Yeah, I think because I had a few strategies where I do that. I found a city and then I release it just so I can have a border of my empire secured by something that has its own armies and that I can give the Rally of the Legions to. Which, speaking of, they are reworking a little bit, right?
Yep, you can now rally of liege to any of your cities.
Which is very, very neat. So now you have a lot more protection, and depending on the shape of your empire, that's a godsend. If your capital isn't central, or if you have a very stretched empire, that's very neat.
It's also very it's very offensive because now you can recruit massive waves of Rally of Lieges units to your front line.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But it's nice. And
Yes.
sometimes, even defensively, I mean, sometimes you get caught with your pants down and your army is on the other half of the map, and suddenly you could use a Rally of the Legions to respond to a city that was sort of left abandoned by your own distraction or other things. So, yeah, it's very neat. I like that change. And yeah, I'm looking forward to trying new things with feudal. I think we can just jump into builds, honestly, Bootman, because we could talk a little bit more about how like there's a militia unit now, or how they changed Call to Glory and all that. But I think at this point we may as well just get into builds, because the big thing about the feudal rework is that a lot of units now can be mounted, which just changes the game for feudal. It becomes a very mount strategy friendly culture, which for those of you who remember this build, Eagle Riders, which was one that I think I named it Storm Riders actually, was a build that I've made on the channel, and it had a very limited kind of roster. It had, I think, one flying unit, which I think was Defenders, and it had Glade Archers as the backup, if memory serves right. And now you get Bannermen and other kind of units that are just mounted, which is very, very neat. Now you have an innate variety of strategic options. And for a flying unit, that's very nice. You have a lot of mobility and variety in reinforcing.
So just to be clear about the scale of this, feudal has all the units that it used to have, plus another one, and then plus two more for each subculture. Okay, that is how many more units they have. Of all of those units, only 3 cannot have a mount.
Yeah, that's pretty spicy, honestly.
It's
So
it's the basic peasant, the basic archer, and then the unique archer that's a part of the
monarchy,
the monarch authority. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, basically just those 3 units, and then everyone else gets a mount. So if you like the spiders, if you like, I don't know, if you like the unique thing a mount brings, now you play feudal, which is a very nice way to bring them into the fold. As because if you want to play like colonial style things and gunfire, you go Reaver. If you want to play tribal stuff, you have barbarian or primal, depending of if you want more brawn or more magic. And then feudal, I think, kind of fell by the wayside as the kind of basic everyman kind of thing. And now they actually have a niche, which is neat. But they can still be the everyman if you want.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think that their mount niche is going to be very critical for certain strategies. Eagle's a big one, so that your whole army has the kind of mobility that the Eagles allow. Um, yeah, I think that is the big one.
Yeah. Far as Giant King builds, you want to mention a few of your ideas? Since now we're talking builds in general, just mention them off the cuff, the ideas you have.
Let me give some feudals real quick, just so we kind of round out the feudal discussion.
Right.
Um, Probably the feudal thing that I am the most interested in right now as a possibility is feudal summoning, because the militia is no longer recruited. It's a summon, and you summon 2 militia with every spell cast. So I'm thinking, what if we're combining that with, say, Tome of the Horde and the Tome of Wards, where they both of those also allow you summoning racial units, and we invest a lot into summoning racial units. Could that be viable? And I think it's possible, especially with, say, a Wizard King to give you more summoning capacity, channelers to lower the cost of summoning spells. There's something to that that I think could be very useful, where it's a racial build, except you're summoning a bunch of stuff. That seems like a niche,
Yeah, and
but I'm not sure.
it's very unique also. Racial summons is rare. Absolutely.
Yes.
So basically, and it's low tier, so it's a low tier racial spam.
Yes. It's completely so I think it has a niche. I haven't fully fleshed out that build yet, because when I hit tier 3 with that build, I have 3 in chaos, astral, order, and materium.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, what am I even doing at that point? Um, but yeah, aside from that, in terms of what I'm gonna do with giants. Okay. So a few of my builds that already oh wait, no, sorry, one more feudal build. I have a dark build based around using elephants and Tome of Vigor to make all of my unit sizes 1, but it's really restrictive because I can only use whatever dark units or other unlocked units I get that have mounts. If I switch that to a feudal build, I'm gonna have a lot more variety and possibilities for those mounted units, and I might end up doing that. Um, so giant wise, I think that the one they're using in the video, and you could expand on it a little bit, is you do a storm giant, primal storm crow. You get the expert seafarers tradition society trait, and then your economy is unbeatable. And then maybe you go into Tome of Paradise and Tome of Prosperity at the end just to flex on everybody, but it's not even needed at that point. In terms of my own ideas for things, I really want to see how far I can push the artifact creation. That's currently my idea. And then I never manifested a quarry based build. I've done it for almost every other province improvement, but not quarries, just because of how they're a bit awkward. But with dungeons adding more quarries into the game, there's 2 more special province improvement quarries from dungeons. and with the unique quarry improvements that giants give. And those improvements also dovetail into artifacts because a quarry from a level 3 renowned giant gives additional artifact creation materials every turn. You can do a really effective quarry artifact strategy. And so I've got Fire Giant with Reclaimers and Great Builders, Industrious, so I'm getting more artifacts that I can disassemble, Enchantment Zeal, Construct, Dungeon, Dreadnought, Sanctuary. That's my current setup. And wherever it goes from there, that's already an incredible core.
That's fair. That's fair. I think there's a lot of a place for for trying that out, and I think for me, I think it's the same for you. I'm kind of waiting to see how the terraforming interactions now work with the changes. So I have no hard plans for giants yet. I think my one idea, which I've mentioned to you, was fire giant, and then using lava to sort of mark a border zone. Because if you can't build on lava, you could very much do a hermit kingdom kind of thing. If, unless of course, lava provinces can be claimed. That depends entirely on whether someone can make an outpost and stake claim on that. It also depends on, oh, now do lava provinces, now that they are possibly crossable, do they deal damage like an Umbral Abyss might? So I'm very curious because depending on how that interacts, I just might have a build that's basically Fire Giant and going very defensive and territorial. But if it's not that deep, then maybe I should go and reconsider, maybe go Rock Giant and go for the mountains and just try to make a more slow down the enemy kind of strategy. So I'm curious as to how terraforming works before I have a definite vision in mind for how I want to play a giant and make giant stuff. But I am very much excited for the feudal rework and reworking the build I already have for feudal. So yeah, right now my mind is on feudal because it is what I know and what from what I'm seeing we can estimate better than we can giants.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I think that even without the current estimation of where things will go, there's a few giant things that I know I'll be doing. For example, I did have a grassland based build. That's going to be Storm Giant now, of course.
Yeah,
And then I had a Frostfire build. I can't imagine why that wouldn't be a giant now.
that's also fair. Far as my builds go, I think I've mentioned this to you. I don't think there's a lot that I would immediately replace with a giant. Maybe I should go back and look into them, but even the one where it was basically forging and very forging focused before Giant Kings came along, I appreciated its Mortal Champion leader for how the Pantheon now works, where you can stack a lot of ascensions, and I've basically made Thor as an elf. But I think I can go back to that and maybe revisit that through the lens of a giant. Because if they were all about forging, I think giants were made for that niche. So maybe that, and maybe my first build that I'll put up on the channel after Eagle Riders will be that, and it will be giants with that forge focus. So it would be underground, it would have focus on items, so it would be very much making use of what we're given without deviating too much into content already here. You know, it will make use of a lot of the new stuff, basically.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot to really appreciate about the way different Pantheon ruler heroes will work with your army. Um, it'd be really powerful if you had, say, a dragon or a champion as your ruler. Probably a
Yeah,
dragon, yeah. If you had a dragon for your ruler, and then you recruit a giant, a wizard, and an eldritch sovereign, you'd get so many global buffs based off leveling those guys up. It'd be
oh
great.
yeah, absolutely. And I guess on a more basic level, which everyone can see here on screen, I just want to see the giant-sized ruler slamming down the axe and just murdering things. It feels
I think
very
we're gonna get that.
satisfying. It's very satisfying the way they work. And even though they seem a little more ranged, I'm hoping I can melee focus one or two so I can really get that uh, giant feel of just being able to smash stuff.
Well, I think that like two of their main weapons are melee, and then one is ranged.
Yeah, so I think we'll get both fantasies, both the rock lobbing and well, I guess not just the rock lobbing. I think also a little bit of magic on their end, conjuring storms. I guess maybe.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
the variety is impressive, and giving them access to every single class is a great move for giving them variety.
yeah, it's. I think they realized how much of a niche Eldritch Sovereign was, and how Dragon flourished more, being more open to any kind of class.
Yeah,
So
agreed.
basically, they learned the lessons with Dragon and Eldritch Sovereign and the hero rework, and Giant Kings is the result of all that work.
Yeah, that's a perfect that's a perfect ending note, I'd say. That's great.
Yeah.
Way to phrase it.
So, thank you. So, yeah, everyone, I think we've gone on longer than last time, but I think we had a lot of ground to cover because it's such a big, lovely update. So, yeah, on that closing note, I think this is it for now. And do check out Bootman. He does make more review-based content, and he doesn't go as much into gaming as I do, but his stuff is solid, and he's very good at analyzing and breaking down stuff. As you can see from this very discussion, he's very eloquent and knows how to break down and analyze stuff. So do check his stuff out.